Welcome and thank you for joining us. Our topic today is driving business value by modernizing with cloud native and AI. I will now hand it over to our speakers.
Thanks and hello, everybody. I'm Lee Sustar. I'm principal analyst at Forrester. I lead our cloud coverage. It takes into account everything from Kubernetes and cloud native, and of course, now AI of the cloud, in the cloud, and all things related.
Hi, I'm Nate Series. I'm a senior product marketing manager on the Azure Cloud Native Apps team. And I focus on our cloud native services like Azure Kubernetes Service, as well as the intersection of AI and cloud native, which we call intelligent apps. So before we talk more about the intersection of cloud native development and AI, it's helpful to put into context what has changed and how we got here. AI is a broad term which covers many different models, and it may seem as if we are entering a new era of AI, but several milestones in the field have brought us to the inflection point that we see today. In 1950, Alan Turing described the Turing tests to determine if a computer could pass for human in written linguistic fluency. Arthur Samuel of IBM coined the term machine learning in 1959, although its origins are rooted in theories of artificial intelligence. In 2006, Geoffrey Hinton of the University of Toronto created fast learning algorithms and used the term deep learning to explain how AI based on machine learning can learn like a human. However, the concept of deep learning has existed for a long time. The Generative Adversarial Network, or GAN, was introduced in 2014. GAN was created by Ian Goodfellow, and with GAN, two neural networks play against each other in a game. The goal of the game is for one network to imitate a photo and trick the opponent into believing that it's real. In 2022, we saw the arrival of ChatGPT, offering a simple way for users to interact with a large language model in natural conversational language. ChatGPT and its underlying models build on the tremendous advances made in large language foundation models over the last few years. Practically speaking, generative AI has forever changed what we can accomplish with software. It's driving consumer adoption of services, reshaping industries, and prompting organizations to consider how they can use AI. ChatGPT saw over 1 million users within its first 5 days of launch, making it one of the fastest growing consumer products in history. Generative AI has the potential to change every industry while creating massive economic value, 15.7 trillion by one estimate. And the vast majority of organizations believe AI will help them differentiate. Figuring out the most effective way to use AI will be critical for both business and technical leaders in the coming years. AI is revolutionizing the types of solutions we can build together and how they are developed. Just like with cloud and mobile before, the companies and organizations that embrace AI effectively will be the market leaders of tomorrow. Applications have become the centerpiece of how customers interact with businesses, and apps are where the experiences enabled by data and AI come to life for users. All sorts of organizations are adopting AI capabilities in their apps, both existing and those yet to be built. With the generative AI revolution, more leaders must consider how to make investments in applications and AI to remain competitive. According to Forrester, 83% of enterprise decision makers are planning to increase their AI spend this year. Microsoft calls apps that leverage data analytics, machine learning, and generative AI intelligent applications. Intelligent apps represent a new way to combine the power of cloud native, data, and AI to deliver unique experiences for users. Current apps have significant limitations. User interactions are rigid or linear, they're based on fixed data sets, and change can be complicated depending on the architecture or the development methodology. With intelligent apps, you can enable natural language interaction, constantly improving user experiences, and quickly deliver new features to market in an iterative fashion. Modernization of existing applications with cloud native technologies like Kubernetes and serverless, cloud scale data, and generative AI is a way organizations can take advantage of new technologies while preserving existing investments. It's difficult to continue innovating during uncertain times, but it's all the more strategically important. When resources are tight, not just in terms of budget, but from a talent standpoint as well, Technology becomes a force for creating competitive advantage. Many organizations are now looking at the intersection of cloud native modernization and AI to unlock business value. And intelligent apps have the potential to revolutionize businesses, enabling you to unlock valuable insights, automate processes, and deliver enhanced customer experiences. So now I'll turn it over to Lee to talk about Forrester's perspective on the intersection of cloud native and AI technologies.
Thanks, Nate. Fantastic big picture look at the evolution of AI over time. We'll do something a little bit simpler here and talk about the evolution of cloud as it's happened in, of course, a much shorter time frame in order to then set up what's happening in terms of this convergence of this decades-long effort around AI and also the transformations we've seen around cloud and cloud infrastructure. But to start with, I want to step back and look at the early days of cloud. And this is a familiar diagram that many of us in the industry have seen, in which it essentially analyzes the cloud by layer of platform or what you're consuming in the cloud. And it very much mirrors the on-premises data center focus that came to maturity in the late 90s, early 2000s, up until the beginning of the cloud era. So, the stack of that you have on the left running all the way up, your on-premises or a private cloud type of stack. And of course, with the advent of cloud and the early lift and shift motion that a lot of people went into, you had the infrastructure as a service up to the level of virtualization, essentially a public cloud provider stepping into doing what some of the virtualization providers were doing on premises, and everything from the operating system on up was essentially a customer responsibility. So in some ways, it was just another data center. You're moving from a data center on a virtualization technology, and you're moving that to the public cloud. And there are a good deal of efficiencies associated with that. A lot of organizations didn't want to be in the data center business anymore. They didn't want to have the big capital outlays necessary to build out data centers. So it made sense in many ways, but didn't necessarily modernize anything, didn't really transform anything. The advent of platform as a service took things further up the stack, in which the cloud providers started working with the stack all the way up to the runtime level. And really, the data and applications were where the customer was focused. And that had some advantages in that it certainly gave customers the ability to tap more widely into the services that were coming from the cloud provider at a faster rate than they could ever do on their own in a data center, or certainly without the kind of investment that would have been necessary for that. So this platform as a service model it was in one sense a model of a kind of a generalization of cloud infrastructure, kind of an assumption that that was going to be delivered to you in a reliable and consistent way across the public cloud, even from one public cloud provider to another. And of course, alongside cloud, and really some of the first cloud uh, uh, innovation was around software as a service, in which everything was essentially provided for you, all the way up through the applications by a provider that was completely independent of your infrastructure, software as a service, or we Forrester talk about cloud applications more broadly. So that really takes us up to from about the generalization of the cloud period from around 2007 up until around 2015 or so, as cloud became the default for enterprise computing. Not necessarily the majority of enterprise computing, but really the default for enterprise computing in the sense that it allowed you to have an assumption about where was going to be the greatest level of efficiency, greatest rollout of new technologies, and so forth. Even if you had a majority of workloads on-prem, cloud increasingly became the reference point. But as that maturation started to take place, that old model started to break down because instead of having a clean separation between infrastructure services and platforms as services and so forth, you began to see collections of services. So, yeah, of course, you still had your core infrastructure, network, compute, storage, and so forth. File management, part of that. These were still core to what the public cloud was offering. But the cloud providers increasingly stepped forward with services that were, fairly tightly integrated with infrastructure on premises, databases as a service, analytics platforms, things that didn't cleanly fit that separation between infrastructure and platforms. The data they became themselves a quasi platform. The cloud itself began to be a target for application development. Rather than going off and building what we had on premises, take advantage of some of the CI/CD pipelines and technologies available in the cloud, embrace those, build there, especially for stateless web apps, facing out in the customers in a retail environment. And of course, cloud applications, as I mentioned, software as a service, but things that are delivered in a SaaS-like fashion. And that takes us up really to the kind of late 20 teens, in where we saw the transition to containerization and cloud native technologies. Now, this is a bit of a dense slide. I'll spend a little time with it to go over some of it in detail. Essentially, what we've seen in the transition to cloud and cloud native is that we've moved away from a cloud version of what you were already doing before, in the cloud, like or in the data center, moving that to the cloud, into something that was qualitatively new. Kubernetes comes out of cloud native technologies, and the cloud providers themselves, a big consortium of providers, have embraced it. And that step forward to generalize a trend in application development around containerization. Containers packaging up all the dependencies of an application in a distinct package that could run pretty much anywhere. That then needed to be generalized at scale. Again, containerization was a tendency that had been taking place before cloud. Cloud gave it a great amount of power and began to provide the way to generalize whole new kinds of platform. It helped modernize architecture, right? Instead of having this kind of cloudified legacy IT, you began to see something that was much more like what the cloud providers themselves were doing internally, available to their customers. It allowed workloads to be decentralized. The old data center model absorbed, all your apps, intended to put strict boundaries around them. As you move towards Kubernetes, which has the flexibility to be deployed both in the public cloud and actually on your data center, either on virtualized infrastructure or even on bare metal, that provided the ability to generalize where applications could run without accepting the constraints of the old data centers. So it began to free up resources and allowed you to leverage compute and storage at scale in ways that weren't possible before, including new edge innovations as well, like small form factor computing, running small containers on special purpose OS. And then you had platform transitions as well. You started to move away from the x86 standard into ARM, GPU, and so forth. So you had this transformation in cloud infrastructure that was taking place that set the basis for the kind of transition that we're seeing today around AI/ML. Again, these are developments that have been proceeding along on different tracks for different periods of time, right? We had the AI efforts and neural networks going back to the 40s and 50s, as Nate remarked. We've had the acceleration of cloud much more recently. Now they're converging. So you have a situation in which you have the sheer breadth and scale of cloud to train large language models like ChatGPT, but also has the ability to make those platforms fit the various use cases that are taking place. And that's where we talk about Kubernetes enabling innovation in three different directions. Can run anywhere, as you can see on the left, edge, public cloud, private cloud. It can support architecture modernization at multiple levels, higher levels of abstraction, depending on the needs of a given organization and what it's trying to do. If it needs to consume a fully formed, ready to go SaaS-like application and build that, that's fine. If they need to curate their own platform, build it out from the Kubernetes control plane up to meet their strategic needs, they can do that as well, all on the same Kubernetes platform. And essentially, Kubernetes becomes a platform for platforms that then enables discrete deployments of compute resources in order to enable AI/ML. And some of the early Kubernetes innovation stories that we track at Forrester are those who are working in AI/ML. They're using Kubernetes for model ops to kind of build their own shops to be able to tackle some of these applications, and they're going to continue to do that. Now we have, in terms of the cloud providers, a range of options where some of that can be carried directly in the cloud, and there's a lot of flexibility there based on the kind of Kubernetes. You'll see big database and analytics providers pointing out that they run on Kubernetes infrastructure, even though in one level, that's incidental to those using it. I don't necessarily know what's underneath that platform, but they put that forward because they understand that the users are increasingly looking for platforms that are going to have long running um, capabilities and have a strong roadmap for the future. So Kubernetes has really put us into a takeoff point for an entirely different kind of cloud. And if this seems like speculation on my part or kind of a fast forwarding of what's happening, our numbers show the opposite. Nate pointed out some of the numbers from Forrester that shows where things are heading in terms of AI. Here's another piece of information that I think is quite indicative. That when we talk to tech leaders, we see that 69% are looking to adopt container services from public clouds. Now, what does that mean? That isn't really a proxy for Kubernetes and cloud native. You're building container applications not to run them in some legacy environment. You're doing that to run on a managed Kubernetes service from a public cloud at some level. So the greater commitment to containerized applications implies a greater generalization of Kubernetes, which then sets the stage for a transformation of cloud that I'll talk about um, in the next slide. So AI in the future of cloud has a lot of different dimensions. You can think about the AI running in the cloud. There's the cloud provider is hosting my GPUs. I can run my large language models there. I can do that at scale without the kind of investments that were necessary in the past for that. That's part of it. But there's also the AI of the cloud in the sense that the intelligence that is being brought to bear by large language models, foundational models, is actually transforming how cloud is even delivered. And then what kinds of platforms are built on that cloud by people who use the cloud providers as their underlying infrastructure. If they're a SaaS provider, they're typically going to be running on one of the big public clouds and look to them to deliver some of those capabilities all the way up the stack in more semi-finished or completely finished platform-like products. Now, to get into that in a little bit more detail, this is what we see as the future of cloud. I've got a report out that came out a few weeks ago in the future of cloud, and the keywords there are abstracted, intelligent, and composable. And I'll go through what each of those means as we look through some of the details there. So I talk about it being abstracted. I mentioned earlier that we've already taken a step up from the specificity, which was dominant for a long period of time around x86 infrastructure. We have ARM, we have GPU. So you start to have cloud uh, instances and workloads that are tailor-made for particular types of infrastructure that's available to them. You have greater infrastructure as code for automation, more functions as a service that further abstract away from some of the infrastructure detail. So you're moving away from the complexity around how the infrastructure is even put together. And some of that's already extending up to low code, integrated software development platforms, multi-cloud container platforms that run on public cloud, hybrid, are quite popular and prevalent in the industry today. So there's lots and lots of choices here. The more abstraction from that complexity, you don't have to wrestle through the details of cloud infrastructure deployment in the same kinds of way. There's still plenty of complexity, but engaging that complexity is going to typically yield higher and better results now, based on the ability to tap into some of the automation. And this is where AI comes in, because AI is enabling smarter operations and higher value work. And a lot of companies are using the public cloud to get business intelligence via AI ML. That's been underway for some time. They've been willing to expend a lot of resources in order to do that. And at the same time that's happening internally, the cloud providers have been fairly systematically simplifying platform operations to give better tooling, things that aren't so much passive consoles, but are really an opportunity to automate and generalize and shape the cloud according to their own organizational needs, rather than sort of taking what's out of the box. And you can see the early stages of cloud providers offering intelligence in their cloud operations. They're using large language models to transform platform operations. And that's going to have a direct impact on organizations. It's going to change DevOps because the operators can spend less time wrestling with infrastructure and the details of automation. They can do that at a higher level, and they can then work more closely with developers and the product teams and the businesses, and basically be able to tailor their IT resources much more closely to what they need. And AI is integral to all that process. That's why when we talk about the composable cloud, that might sound futuristic, but it's actually happening right now. This research took a look at what's happening, what's being offered by the various vendors, and also how people are coming to grips with it. So essentially, organizations are saying, "I'm not going to be a customer of Cloud One, Two, or Three, or Four, and sort of cobble together a solution from that. I'm going to start with an understanding of the resources and capabilities that are available by the cloud providers today, and then I will choose my providers and my solutions according to the best uh, 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 and most efficient and cost-effective solution that's available to me. That's the essence of how cloud providers, or excuse me, how cloud customers are engaging with their cloud providers today. They are essentially composing their own cloud. They might do that by buying a multi-cloud container platform, which gives them a multi-cloud abstraction. They might say, actually, we could tailor our own approach to build that on a single or multiple clouds ourselves, build our own platforms. The capabilities are all there, and they can have a Kubernetes or cloud native platform ability on their various SaaS or SaaS type platforms to be able to curate and extend those systems according to their needs as well. That's quite a sea change. It's underway now, and I think for some time, people have been anticipating this. There's been a talk about super clouds and meta clouds and so forth, and that's not those aren't wrong descriptions, but I think they miss out on the what is the actuating elements in this transition. AI and the ability of customers having reached a certain maturity and command of their cloud environments moving into this. So in the short term, we're seeing this right now, right? You can start to look at how technology evolution is going to be assisted by AI. AI enhanced developments in the way that Nate was describing are already having incredibly rapid adoption. That's going to allow those developer teams to interact more closely with the business. And also at the same time, the operators are going to be able to leverage some of those same AI advances to further automate what they're doing and further abstract as well. And there'll be a lot of partner relationships that also will either be expanded or be forged anew as organizations are looking for different providers, different levels of expertise in order to do that. You can see industry cloud taking shape around some of these technologies where the AI capabilities and the intelligence of the cloud allows a closer fit between the general purpose IT cloud of old into something that's much more tailored to a particular industry or organization. And in that regard, you start to see cloud moving away from simply the information technology realm, but more closely to the operating technology world, often with partnerships with leading industrial equipment providers and so forth. And of course, the edge around that. And really what we're looking at here is that data platforms in AI are going to define cloud. When you think about the core cloud services, there can be fairly similar. Yes, there's always differences in how different infrastructure is played out, how different networking details are played out. But the real differentiators, the real focus for a lot of customers right now are going to be on who can provide me with the best data platforms and the AI around that. So sometimes that will be coming from the cloud providers themselves. Oftentimes it'll be coming from partners. Usually, I think a combination of the above. And the advent of some of the technology and the way it puts power in the hands of any organization's developers means that they're not passive in this regard. They're not sitting around waiting for customers to put it on their doorstep. They're actually shaping that in ways that they can. So that's going to be a big shift, the move towards taking these cloud technologies into operational technologies, curating your own data platforms. That's taking place over the next 3 to 5 years. And over the long term, you have a cloud that's going to fuse with edge, and intelligence is going to be a real critical part of this. Cloud is going to become synonymous with multi-cloud and edge. It's going to blend together. You're going to see the advent of technologies such as WebAssembly, which is mentioned here in the chart, which a further layer of abstraction, which is already being implemented in a pre-standard way by a number of different organizations and available in preview modes or experimental modes from the leading vendors today. You're going to have a lot of pre-built platforms that the cloud providers themselves and partners will be able to roll out to assist different organizations. And you'll have the beginnings of the metaverse, which had a start that was a little bit controversial, and what the expectations were and what actually has taken place so far. But you do start to see some of the practical innovations around that taking place in the industrial realm. So we are really at the outset of a pretty broad transition in how cloud is organized today. And we expect at Forrester that that's going to continue. So if you take a look at the slide here, you can see some of the developments that we already see taking shape. You're getting to see um, the AI ops and observability, intelligent applications, in that line at the top, the operator and developer cloud experiences. It's going to be AI powered, both in terms of the experiences and the decisioning. This is happening now. The various composable elements of this are going to range from everything from AI ML as we know it today, all the way up to brain computer interface. And for a more near term look at this is the kind of stack as it's shaping up based on AI. So if you start to abstract cloud, and the infrastructure is more variable based on the needs of a given application developer, you start to center the application developer. You start to center AI developed applications that can then have either pre-built or customized interactions with the underlying infrastructure. In some cases, that might be serverless as we know it today. It may be WASM as things emerge. And depending on the needs of an organization, it's going to be shaped by the overarching strategic needs. In some cases, you might want to consume a platform that's pre-built, in which you can leverage intelligence and development around that to enhance it. In some cases, you might have to build that out more deeply based on your own strategic considerations for a given manufacturer, for a given financial services company, a given government entity. It's going to vary, but the point is that it can vary without the taking on of a level of technical debt that can become an impediment to further innovation. Cloud and intelligent cloud, composable cloud gives us a lot more flexibility in that regard. So that's the comments that I have for today. Happy to continue the discussion with anyone who's interested, and I'll throw it back to you, Nate.
Thanks, Lee, for that look at the evolution of cloud technologies and how you're seeing AI and abstraction factor in to this in the current space. That was really interesting. I want to just point out some resources for those attending the webinar. If you want to learn more about Azure services that support cloud native and AI, you can do so here. Thanks for attending.
This does conclude our session on driving business value by modernizing with cloud native and AI. Thank you for watching and have a great day.